Hi guys, it's Rachel. Today I am talking about just how much food I'm actually growing this year. So this is partly because a lot of people are talking about growing their own food right now. Given the state of the world, I can understand why a lot of people are a little worried about where their food is going to come from. But this is also partly about explaining just how much food you can grow in a very small amount of space. If you have a small yard or just a small plot to garden in, I really want to let this video be an encouragement to you as to how much food you can actually really grow. You don't need a huge garden, a farm, to grow enough food for you to feed yourself and maybe feed a family too. Alright, so first I want to talk about what I'm working with. I have a 4x16 foot bed. I have another 4x4 foot bed. And I have 14 useful containers that I'm growing in. And in terms of the food that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to leave out things that aren't necessarily sustenance producing. So that's things like herbs, and I'm leaving out my hot peppers because while I am growing a lot of hot peppers, they're definitely not like a large volume of really edible stuff. It's more a little bit here and there for flavoring, so I'm not going to be including those. So in terms of how much food I am growing, I'm going to start out by talking about peas. I have 10 Tom Thumb pea plants, and I actually had a really hard time finding out on the internet how much these plants are actually supposed to produce. This is my first time growing them, and looking at the estimated size, I said maybe 20 to 30 pods per plant would be reasonable, which would leave me with 200 to 300 pods, somewhere thereabouts, for the year. And I actually don't know how much that is in terms of how much you need to survive, because a lot of websites that I looked at were looking at shelled peas and not pea pods. So I'm looking at these peas, and they'll probably be only a minor source of food for me this year. So next to my peas I have my carrots, and this is, I have no idea how many carrots I'm growing actually. I wish I could be more helpful with it, but let me tell you how I tried to figure out the carrots this year. So I looked at the number of seeds that come in the package that I planted. I planted a whole package of oxheart carrots and half a package of black nebulas. And so oxheart carrots, they said online that they can get up to be 1 pound each. And I figure most of mine won't get up to that maximum size, so I went with a conservative estimate of about half a pound per carrot there. And then black nebula are more like a regular sized carrot, even though they're very dark colored. And a regular sized carrot is about 0.13 pounds each. So what I did was I asked the internet what the normal average germination rate for carrot seeds are. And optimally you would get about 60% germination. So according to that, I would have 180 of my 300 oxhearts sprout and 90 of my black nebula seeds sprout, give or take, in optimal conditions. And then the math starts to break down a little bit, because it says I would produce 90 pounds of oxheart carrots and 11.7 pounds of black nebula carrots. And this is in a 4x4 foot space. That doesn't sound right at all, because charts online say the average carrot yield per 100 square feet is 69 pounds, which is 0.69 pounds per square foot. So 16 square feet could produce 11.04 pounds, which sounds a lot more reasonable in terms of how much carrot you can produce in a space. And the average person, single person, needs between 10 and 20 pounds per year of carrots. So it sounds like I'm definitely in that range, but according to my calculations, I could have anywhere between 11 and 100 pounds of carrots. So it's definitely going to be somewhere in that range. In terms of my onions that I'm growing, I actually went out and just counted all of the onion plants that I have. Now, some of them look like kind of smallish, like maybe they'll never fully bulb up. But assuming that they all bulb up, all the ones that I currently have, I have 64 onions right now. And assuming they're an average of 4.34 ounces per onion, which is kind of on the smaller side, which is what I would expect. I don't think I have enough experience to expect that I'll grow like the maximum size onion. According to 4.34 ounces, which is 0.27 pounds per onion, I would be growing 17.28 pounds of onion. And that's a little below the recommended yearly amount for a single person, which is 28 pounds. But that's still quite a lot of onion. See, in terms of, oh, and also the square footage for the onions that I'm using, it's a 4 by 8 foot area that I dedicated to onions there, so that's 32 square feet of onion. In terms of radishes, I have about 6 square feet that the radishes are in. The chart says that I should be growing in that amount of space about 0.66 pounds of radish, whereas the chart recommends 4 pounds per single person per year. So I'm a little bit below on that. But I also very highly densely planted my radishes. And one of the things to consider about this chart overall is this chart is an average based on planting rows, like as if you were farming this. So because I'm not planting in rows and I'm planting with minimum spacing, I probably am going to be growing more than what the chart predicts based on the square footage that I have dedicated to the radishes. But we'll see. I'll measure them and we'll find out. In terms of the turnips, I have about 4 square feet of turnips, so a little bit less than my radishes. According to the chart, that should give me something like 2.28 pounds of of turnip, whereas it recommends 12 pounds for a single person. So that's well below the average, but again, I am highly densely planting these differently than how the chart is predicting that I would be planting them. So I can expect probably more, but I wouldn't expect that I would grow 6 times more than what the chart is saying I would grow. So I'm still not all the way up to what I would need for a year on turnips, but I think that's gonna be okay. Let's see, garlic, I have 16 square feet, so a 4 by 4 plot dedicated to garlic. According to the chart, that means I'm growing about 3.2 pounds of garlic, and it says I need about 3 pounds for the year. So it looks like I'm pretty good with garlic for the year. Now the 2 big ones that I'm growing this year are sweet peppers and tomatoes. So for sweet peppers, I have several different varieties, and for ease of math, I just assumed bell pepper because some of the ones I'm growing are much bigger than bell peppers and some are much smaller, and I figured bell pepper would be a good average that I could get a lot of good numbers for so that we can estimate about how much I'm going to grow. I'm going to have 17 plants of sweet peppers going in, and assuming about 6 to 8 peppers per plant, that means I'd have 102 to 136 peppers. At an average of half a pound each, that gives me between 51 and 68 pounds of peppers. And the chart only predicts that I need 6.5 pounds for myself. So yeah, I'm doing great on peppers, making up for some of the lost harvests in other areas. In terms of tomatoes, I have 16 indeterminate tomato plants I'm going to be putting in. Tomatoes produce on average, according to the internet, 10 pounds per plant. So that means I'll have around 160 pounds of tomatoes. According to the chart, I only need 60 pounds for myself, so that's 100 extra pounds of tomatoes. So I could very easily make up for other food with the tomatoes. There's so many sauces and salsas and all this other stuff I can make to make those really filling. let's see, two more. I have beans. I just planted my beans actually. I have 48 plants that I put in of the bush variety. Assuming about 20 pods per plant, and assuming a harvest for pods and not beans. I use the average weight of a green bean because all the varieties I'm growing are going to be about green bean size, but they're going to be very, very pretty compared to green beans. I've got dragon's tongue. I've got another like red and white spotted one that I can't pronounce very well. And I can't remember what the third one is called that I planted. But they're all bush types. And so I use the average weight of a green bean, which is 0.012 pounds. So assuming 20 pods per plant, that's 0.24 pounds per plant. So about a quarter pound per plant. And with 48 plants, that gives me 11.52 pounds of beans, which is about a third of the 32 pounds recommended by the chart. So not actually getting a lot of beans. In terms of potatoes, I have 10 plants out there. Potatoes will produce 3 to 6 potatoes per plant. So that means I'll have between 30 and 60 potatoes. And I planted potatoes of the russet variety. And so those are, online it said between a quarter pound and a whole pound. So I took the middle, said half a pound per potato. So that gives me somewhere between 15 and 30 pounds of potato. And according to the chart, I would need 100 pounds for a year. And at this point, I guess I should really clarify, the chart is taking an average of the American diet. So 100 pounds of potatoes is including things like potato chips and French fries. It's not necessarily just counting your baked potatoes and your mashed potatoes that you might make at home for dinner. So having like 30 pounds of potatoes might actually be about what I need for myself as somebody who doesn't eat a lot of potato chips or French fries. And again, what I'm working with here is a total of 80 square feet of bed space and 14 containers. And each container is about, I think those are 12-inch containers. So if you were to take some of the space that I'm allotting as bed space and make that container space, I believe that I could fit everything that I'm growing in the beds actually in containers in my yard. And I think that this volume of food, at least for a single person, it's a little ambitious, but I think it's doable. I really want to encourage you to make creative use of the space that you have, especially if you are in a small house, if you have a small yard in the back, or if you're like me and you happen to have an apartment that has a yard. I'm actually very lucky to have an apartment that has a yard here in the United States. But the yard space that I do have, I'm trying to use wisely. And again, I got lucky having those beds out in the back, pre-made from some previous tenant who was here. But if I didn't have those beds, I would still have all the space that I have in my yard. And I do think that I could recreate all of that volume in my yard. So I really, really want to encourage you to try. Even if you feel like I have no space, you can still grow something. If you have a porch, if you have a balcony that gets any amount of sun, you can grow things. I used to have just a balcony apartment where it was mostly shaded too, and I still managed to grow enough basil to make like 2 or 3 batches of pesto. I grew oregano, rosemary, and I dried those spices, and those were a good asset. What else did I grow? I think I must have grown parsley too. And parsley is such a great addition to homemade vegetable stocks and things like that. So even if you're not growing like a ton of food for your sustenance, growing little things, and especially growing herbs, can be a real asset to your overall diet. So I really do hope that you give growing your own food a good try, even if you do have a small space, because you can grow food, and it's so encouraging to even grow just a little bit of your own food. So can you grow enough food for an entire year in just 80 square feet? If you're just trying to feed yourself, I'm gonna go with maybe. because all of these numbers right here, they don't even include the fall garden. I haven't really quite planned out what I'm planting in the fall. So right now I just talked about spring garden since January and the expected summer garden. And I think that it's entirely possible to grow a very large chunk of the food that you're going to eat for a year in 80 square feet. So I encourage you to give it a try. If you are just getting into gardening for the first time, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, like you have to grow everything that you eat. And you're totally allowed to just grow either the things that you love to eat that are really expensive or the things that you think are beautiful. You know, you can grow anything that strikes your fancy. But if you are looking at growing sustenance foods, it looks like for me, the things that are the most space efficient in terms of production are going to be the tomatoes and the peppers. Both of those I was way over on the recommended yearly amount that I'm going to be growing. And I'm only growing all of those peppers and tomatoes in 32 square feet. Sorry, not 32. It's 12 by 48 square feet. So 48 square feet is where I'm growing the bulk of my food for the year, and I really think that it's possible. So go ahead and give it a try, honestly. And I'll definitely be letting you know how much food I actually end up growing, especially with those carrots, man. I have no idea how many carrots I'm gonna have. Somewhere between 11 and 100 pounds. We'll see. But if you want to find out, you should definitely subscribe. And if you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. It really makes a difference to me connecting with you guys and this community. So until next time, I wish you guys all well and happy gardening.